Been a long time since I've seen some Hitchcock films on my channel. I did a whole season of Hitchcock reviews a while back. Gone back, watched a few more recently. Starting off with Strangers on a Train, which was released in 1951. And it follows the story of two men that meet on a train. And one of them is a world-renowned tennis player. He's quite famous. Just seems like a fairly average guy. And the other one is what is very clearly a psychopath who at first kind of jokes about how he's figured out a way, he has a theory of how one might get away with murder if he was to team up with someone else and the two of them kind of kill each other's wives, so to speak, or whoever's somebody's it is they need killing, and because they're strangers, because they've come up with this agreement, having no other prior history, then there would be no connection to each other, and therefore they would be able to get away with it. Of course, this is just a theory, except for the fact that this guy decides he's going to put it into practice and sets about murdering this other man's wife and then expecting him to murder someone for him in return. So that whole conceit to me screams Hitchcock. You hear that setup and immediately that sounds like something Hitchcock would make. The question is whether or not it's any good. Does it stand up to a lot of his other work? The answer is yes. I had a lot of fun with this. I feel this is quite a playful movie. It's not like Psycho, in which everything that's kind of played quite serious. I mean, it's Hitchcock. There are certain elements about it that Hitchcock wants to have fun with, but for the most part, Psycho is kind of straight down the line. It's a very serious movie with a very serious subject matter. And while the subject matter here is obviously quite serious, we're dealing with murder and plots to commit it, I just feel like Hitchcock is kind of having fun. He's taking these absurd characters and absurd situations and he's wringing out the tension with it, but also throwing in a lot of humour there. There's a lot of 90s kind of thrillers that owe a debt to Hitchcock in general, to be honest. But yeah, I see a lot of the elements of your 90s thrillers in this, where a stranger comes into someone's life and then just completely upends it with their ever-growing psychotics. Robert Walker plays Bruno Anthony here, and Bruno is the psycho in question, and he's having a real blast with this. He just looks like a giddy schoolboy, really. The thing is, he doesn't look that imposing, and yet there's just something off about this guy, obviously, given what I've just told you about him. I love the way he plays with Farley Granger's character, Guy Haynes. So Guy Haynes, obviously being the other man that he meets on the train, but it's just the way he shows up at functions that he's not even invited to, and just kind of weaves in and out of people and making his presence known and felt quite clearly. Or just even in the street, Haynes will be talking to the girl that he's kind of in love with, and he's just there in the background, just making it blatantly obvious that he wants to be seen. Because obviously Haynes in this film, he doesn't want to, commit murder. He doesn't want to fulfil his end of the bargain. Not that this was a bargain that he ever struck up. This was just flights of fancy that Bruno kind of spoke out loud, and Haynes kind of just suddenly got roped into. But yeah, I like the way that Granger plays Haynes as well. He's got something of a James Stewart quality about him, I would say, that every man kind of put into a extreme situation where you kind of feel for him and identify with him. He feels like, just your regular Joe kind of thing. His situation in the film is that he's got an overbearing wife who they don't see each other anymore. They clearly split up, but she holds the power over him and kind of does so with relish. You can see that she's the villain of the piece in that regard when it comes to their relationship. I love the way that Hitchcock builds the suspense throughout this film, where you feel like the walls are closing in, where every time Haynes kind of comes up with an idea to kind of get out of this, or to get one over on Bruno and point the finger back at him, Bruno somehow finds a way to kind of swing it back, and then it just means that the stakes are raised. The police force attention is kind of centered more on Haynes, and you feel that like the noose getting tighter around his neck as it looks like it's going to be impossible for him to get out of this situation. And then obviously as he comes up with a plan towards the end, and we get the big showdown, the climax at the end, I love the way that plays out. I love the way that we have a fight on a merry-go-round, which is hardly the most death-defying, adrenaline pumping ride that you would have on a fairground. But yeah, they have a fight on a merry-go-round, and somehow Hitchcock manages to make it feel tense. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but there's a side to Walker's character, to this Bruno character, that I kind of found interesting, and it may just be me reading stuff into it, but I got the sense like he wanted to be caught. This is all a game to him anyway. You can see this is a man who loves playing games. That's what all this is about, really. He wants to prove himself the smartest man in the room and get away with things that he shouldn't be able to get away with. But there's a sense of, dare I say, guilt looming over him. If that is guilt, he's certainly trying to suppress it and push it away. But there are moments like when he sees the face of his victim in this other woman that kind of runs throughout the film, and it's almost like, yeah, from beyond the grave, his victim is kind of taunting him, whatever. But yeah, it puts his back against the wall. You can see it gets him rattled whenever that happens, and there are episodes where he gets drunk as well. Like he's clearly in a situation or an environment where actually drawing attention to yourself would be the last thing you want to do, given what you've done. The fact that his plan revolved around this notion that, well, two strangers offing each other's, victims, so to speak, it leaves no connection between you that the police can trace. So if he's coming into these big ballroom parties and being seen, all of a sudden there is a pretty damn big connection between the two of them. And he doesn't really seem to give much thought to that. And it's almost like he wants to be caught, in a sense. He does feel guilty, but he's suppressed it, he's pushed that down, and something in him does kind of want to be caught. And I liked that. I found that interesting. It added a layer to the character that I think, otherwise would be missing if he was just some guy who kind of stayed in the shadows and was super clever and didn't have any flaws aside from the homicidal tendencies. But yeah, the fact that he gets drunk and things like that, it adds a layer to him that I find makes him a more interesting character. And the character of Haynes is quite interesting as well, just because of the moral dilemmas that he's faced with. Again, the situation that he finds himself in with his wife, a woman that no sane man would want to have any part with at this point. When you look at her behaviour, you feel for him, but at the end of the day, that is his wife. He is in that situation. So what does he do? Obviously, the moral thing is to not send someone to kill your wife. But what I mean is, like, Hitchcock puts enough in there to make the decisions this guy has to make feel palpable, feel like they're going to create a bead of sweat on your forehead when you realise the predicaments this guy's in. So yeah, like I said, of the two, I find the Bruno character more interesting, but then villains do tend to be more interesting than the heroes of your story, just because you can kind of live vicariously through their behaviours, which you wouldn't otherwise commit. Whether that says a bit too much about me, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, Strangers on a Train, really great film, really loved it. Fantastic piece of work from Hitchcock, around his golden period, I would say, So a lot of films from this period I've seen of Hitchcock's, and it does tend to be just a mine of really great movies. And yeah, this is another one to add to that list. Strangers on a Train. Have you seen it? And if so, what did you think about it? Do you agree with my assessment, or would you say this is overrated, from Hitchcock? Yeah, let me know. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thank you for watching this review, and until next time, cracking.